So on today's podcast, we're talking about the but now effect that occurs when we have moments, learnings, experiences, or habits that help us transform into something new. But now things are different because... Stay tuned and I'll explain more. Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. We have we're at the 250 episode and beyond mark right now in the life of this podcast. So, which is super exciting and so awesome. So thanks to all the listeners out there who have been a part of this journey from the very beginning. So glad those of you that have been part of it from the beginning that this continues to add value to your life, to your work. And for everybody that's new to the podcast, as this continues to grow and spread, if you're coming newly to the podcast, welcome in. So glad you're here. Hope you'll go back and check out some of the past episodes. So many great micro pods about different topics. All you got to do is Google my name and a certain topic, and I'm sure you'll find something that can speak to that around leadership and culture and clarity and trust and vision and mission and all the stuff that we've been talking about on this podcast for a number of years now. So I hope you'll do that. My commitment to you, as always, anybody coming into the podcast, is I want this to be a place for you to step back, to be able to think about your own life, to think about that temperature you're trying to set in your life and your work, and also then to hopefully have some ideas and some things that'll breathe a little good oxygen into you so that you can take the next step, whatever that is on your path. So thank you for being here. If you'll do me the quick favor before we dive into today's topic, if you'll rate the podcast 5 stars, of course, if you'll give it, whatever platform you're using, just give it the old 5 stars. If you'll leave an authentic review, your own words on the platforms that you're listening to this on, and say, hey, that's how the algorithms work, and help other people find it. And then obviously, anytime you share the podcast with people in your network, whether that's on social media, whether that's with your friends, your colleagues, your team, and say, hey, here's an episode. I want us to listen to it and then talk about it together. Whatever that is for you, every time you share the podcast, it spreads to other people. So thanks to everybody out there who does that. That's how these messages get amplified further into the world. And that's why we're trying to create this community and this opportunity for these messages to get out there further in the world. So thanks everybody that does that. On the last episode, we talked about word economy matters and the power of words and how we as messengers and the messages we give can compel people and connect people and some important things to think about as we think about the precision to the words that we bring and the congruence to our words and actions, and also just how we share them with the people around us. And on the episode after this, we're going to be talking about the power of atomic habits and how our habits, our own personal goals and pursuits, and in our relationships and our teams and our cultures, and how those we can be thoughtful about those. Coming up Friday, November 8th at my event, Thermostat Cultures Live, which is a hybrid event, limited in-person seating in Columbus, Ohio, and then also a hybrid part that you could participate in virtually on Friday, November 8th. If you go to thermostatcultureslive.com, James Clear, my friend and author of the globally celebrated book Atomic Habits, is going to join me for a conversation, and we're going to talk all about habits and how it connects to our own personal leadership and also to the cultures that we're creating with people around us. So today's topic really ties to both of those, this word economy and the messages we deliver, and also to the habits we form that we're going to talk about here coming up. But our patterns of behavior start to shift when we have certain experiences that challenge us to learn something new, to develop, to grow, to think about something different, and something shifts, something changes. So on today's podcast, we're talking about the but now effect that occurs when we have moments, learnings, experiences, or habits that help us transform into something new. But now things are different because, stay tuned and I'll explain more. Let's take a quick break, pause, and we'll be right back. I want to share with you the great excitement for this year's Thermostat Cultures live event on Friday, November 8th, 2024. As you know, this event that I've hosted over the last 7 years has been an inspiring day of development focused on authentic leadership and culture. I've been joined by powerful voices like Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks, Shane Battier, two-time NBA champion, Jenny Britton, founder of Jenny's Ice Cream, Jessica Jackley, co-founder of Kiva, Cameron Mitchell from Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, Greg Oden, and on and on and on. This year, Thermostat Cultures Live will be a hybrid event. There will be a powerful VIP in-person experience with limited seating in Columbus, Ohio, and a virtual experience for those wanting to participate remotely. I am so excited about this year's lineup of voices joining me, such as New York Times best-selling author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, and founder of The Theory of Enchantment, Chloe Valdery. So please visit thermostatcultureslive.com or jasonvbarger.com to learn more, and I hope you'll help share the word and join these conversations that are the currency for change. Rally your team, reserve your seats, thermostatcultureslive.com. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of flying to Minneapolis, Minnesota to celebrate the life of the father of my dear friend Gabe. His family has been a special family in my life, and I love them all dearly. And it was an honor to get to be there to celebrate his father and their family. His father, the Reverend Dick Flynn, was a minister and someone in the early camp days of my childhood. If you can remember going to summer camp, and if you ever were part of an experience like that, and his father was not only a minister, but he was the camp director at Camp Akita, this place that has been such an important presence in my life, as many of you know, and others will be learning about. But he was someone who helped me think bigger about my life as a kid and begin to think about hopes and pursuits and what difference, life could be if you entered it from a different perspective. And he introduced all of us to the idea of thinking about our lives, bigger than just the things that we normally thought about as kids or adolescents, and to think about the perspective of a loving God who actually cared for us. And again, beyond faith, if that isn't your thing, or if that has never been a part of your life, I hope you'll hear this message beyond that. But for those of us growing up and thinking about this was the first time that messages like that, at least for me, began to make sense and began to challenge me to kind of step back and think about my life and see the world from different perspectives. And it was a simple but powerful message that helped me see beyond the normal things that you're focused on as a young person. The trivial worries and pursuits that you have as a elementary school kid and a middle school kid. A lot of the words and the experiences that were provided at camp challenged me to kind of step back myself and think about the kind of loving person and friend that I truly hope to be in the world. And that was the beginning of thinking about my life in that way. And I owe it to Camp Akita. I owe it to the Reverend Dick Flynn and John Ross and others that came many years, and all the people friends and people that have influenced me in many, many years throughout that experience. And as I'm sure, many of the listeners out there can attest, those that went to, camp, went away to camp as a kid, you recognize that experience can be quite powerful and have a great impact on your life. So later in life, I was honored to be the camp director of that very camp, Camp Akita, for many years, and had the privilege and the responsibility and the great honor to try to carry some of those messages in the program and the work that we were doing with elementary school and middle school kids and high school and college students and beyond, to think about the world from these perspectives and think about the difference that we could make based on the way we think about our lives. It was a absolute cherished time of my life. And as many of you know, out of college, I spent the first 10 years of my career of helping to lead this summer camp and to lead trips to take people to build houses internationally for families in Mexico and the Dominican Republic, and a project serving the homeless living outside of the shelter system in Columbus, Ohio, and working with high school students and college students, again, to think about this idea of servant leadership and the people that we hope to be in the world, and what difference does our beliefs play in who we end up being. So it was a monumental experience for me as a kid, and at Dick's funeral, his children, Gabe and Jesse, who I love dearly, of course, they did a masterful job of celebrating his life. They talked about the very best of him, the very great things that he did. They were also, able to talk about his imperfections, as none of us are. None of us are perfect. And he talked about the ways in which, even in the midst of his pursuits and all the wonderful things he did, of the things that maybe ruffled some people and maybe were imperfections. And ultimately, we celebrated the person he was always striving to be. And they shared in their comments that their dad had performed 32 different sermons on this idea of but now over the course of his ministry. And immediately as they shared about it, it caught my attention, and I leaned in, and because I don't know if I didn't remember that, I don't know if I missed that, but now, again, you hear some things from different ears at different stages in life, and here I am, a grown adult, and all of a sudden to think about the fact that he did 32 different sermons over the course of his career about this idea of but now. And so it immediately jumped out to me and caught my attention, and I wanted to know more about this but now idea. And so since the ceremony, I've reached out to Gabe and have followed up with him to have him share more highlights from his dad's work on this subject. And the message, derived this but now idea, the more I learned about it, it derived from his study of the Bible, where the Greek phrase de nouni, a Greek phrase, I guess, that shows up quite frequently, that is pronounced de nouni. And it was this phrase kept showing up throughout the Bible in different places. And again, even if you're somebody who isn't thinking about a life of faith, hang with me here and think about this imagery, because it relates, and I'm going to connect it to the work that we're doing in the world today related to leadership and culture. But this Greek phrase, de nouni, was used quite frequently. And the English translation of de nouni is but now. And it was commonly used to describe when someone experienced something or learned something new, something happened, and but now things were different. And so but now was this transition to, we used to know things one way, but now that we had this experience, but now that we had this learning, but now that we had this epiphany, but now that we had this experience, now things were different. It signified a change that had occurred, but now things are different. And so Dick went on to use, modern examples in many of his, messages about this, where he used, he talked about how we used to believe the world was flat, but now we transformed our understanding of, an image of the world. We used to think horse and buggy were the only best ways for transportation, but now we learned new ways and discovered new ways of moving around the world. Many of the examples of a life of faith included learning something that had transformed the way you might approach your life or who you wanted to be. And as I left the ceremony and the great, again, celebration of his life, I've been thinking more and more about this concept and the application of this idea even beyond a life of faith, which again I think is powerful too. But I've been thinking about it from even a broader perspective. I think about the ways in which we develop as humans and the but now effect that occurs. I think about leaders and teams and cultures who have experiences and learnings and new ways of seeing and operating that but now are transformed into something new. They shift the way they lead and approach their work. I think about modern examples of the leader who once believed that leadership was about power and control and coercing people to do what they wanted them to do, and then in their deeper understanding and learning about the concept of servant leadership, but now they are transformed in a new way of thinking about how they lead. They start to see leadership as an image of being at the bottom of the pyramid rather than the top of the pyramid. And they start to realize that true, authentic leadership in the world today is more about coaching rather than coercing. And so because they learned and experienced and went through this development, but now they are different. I think about the team who has a powerful conversation. I've been thinking about not only specific leaders that have had this kind of transformational experiences where they've shifted the way they lead, the way they approach things with their team and the people in their life. And then I think about the teams that I've been involved with where teams and organizations and cultures have entered into powerful conversations about their core values. And I think about a team that moves beyond just the execution of what they're trying to do as a team and into a space of how they are committed to working together. And in the midst of that development and that learning and that experience of shifting their way of thinking only about the outcome of their work to really diving in and looking at the process of how they collaborate, how they show up, the culture they create together, and then but now they are different due to this transformation of development. I think about the business or organization that is so focused on the outcomes of their work. Again, that the driving of results that they're oblivious to or not understanding why they're losing staff due to a lack of engagement of their people. And then as they begin to have a new experience, a new way of thinking about it, and they begin to reorient themselves into a mindset of engagement, and that their role of helping to align people and find clarity for the culture they hope to create. But now they then transform, and what's fascinating about all those examples, not only that I've experienced in real time with teams and organizations, of watching them transform their culture and then the results follow, but you study the research behind it, is those organizations that transform and develop their type of thinking and acting and interacting around leadership and around how they engage people and the culture that they create, the results and the performance metrics actually follow. But now they transform and the results actually follow. I think about this but now leadership as a reminder that all of our teachings, all of our learnings, all of our experiences, those things we focus on produce a but now effect that transforms us into a new place. We never stay stuck in the same place. We're always learning and growing. And so we are different because we went through that learning. We went through that shift. We went through that experience together. But now we are different. So this makes me think about the process that many teams and organizations, and certainly the ones that I'm engaged with out there, are actively going through. The reason why we are so intentional about how we're developing leaders and how we're developing emerging leaders and how we're being intentional about the culture you're trying to create for your organization, not just what you do, but how you do it. That all of that is about this continual transformation that because we learned this, because we developed, because we experienced this together, but now we are different. The process of calibrating our own thermostat and setting the temperature in our own personal lives, of course, but also within our teams and organizations, is a process that never stops. We're never fully developed, and we're always becoming something new and hopefully something stronger. But now we are different. So as always, let me leave you with a couple of questions to ponder. How do you hope to be transformed or shift in the new year ahead in your personal life or your role as a leader? What experiences, learnings, and development would help your team or your culture transform into something new? What intentional conversations or experiences or development will help, but now things be different? So thanks for everybody for listening to today's conversation. I hope this got you thinking in some exciting ways. If any of these topics are helpful to you or you want to learn more about them, or if you have questions, track us down, info@jasonvbarger.com, info@jasonvbarger.com via email, or you can just track us down through the jasonvbarger.com website. If we can help continue to design content that meets you where you are, or if you're looking for support for your team or for your culture, you can track us down there and we can talk about how some of these messages could be helpful to your culture and that intentional culture that you are creating with your team, with your organization, the people in your life and your work. So remember, the future of leadership is you, it's me, it's us. We have an opportunity to get clear on what is that temperature we're trying to set. And then we have an opportunity to be courageous and committed to kind of breathing good oxygen into ourselves and to others along the way. I hope you'll keep tuning in. Again, I hope you'll go back and check out all the great episodes that are already out there and check them out and rate the podcast 5 stars and review it in your own words and share episodes that resonate with you, with the people in your life and your work. And I hope you'll continue to amplify these messages and keep showing up as we'll continue to be committed to sharing content that hopefully meets you where you are. And so remember that the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet, they stimulate progress together by stimulating and recalibrating this kind of thermostat together and then breathing good oxygen into each other. So step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.